Good afternoon and a very warm welcome to all gathered here. I'm Aparna Chandrasekharan, Education USA Advisor with the US-India Educational Foundation. On the momentous occasion of the United States commemorating 50 years of the Apollo 11 moon landing, and on the occasion of the Vice President of the United States, Mr. Mike Pence, recently unveiling the NASA spacecraft for Artemis 1 lunar mission, and closer to home, with the successful launch of India's moon mission, the Chandrayaan-2, there could not be a better time to talk about space, or the final frontier for mankind, as Captain Kirk of the famous series Star Trek would intone. Today's program schedule is divided into 4 segments. In the first segment, you will hear about the importance and value of educational tours, particularly to NASA, from Mr. Kayambu Ramalingam of Go for Guru. In the second segment, I will touch upon higher education opportunities in the US, especially in space-related fields. In the next segment, Ms. Kathleen Hosey, Press Officer, US Consulate General, Chennai, will talk about the event and introduce former NASA astronaut Dr. Don Thomas. And in the final segment, Dr. Thomas will talk about his experiences, and you will have a chance to ask him your questions. I now invite Dr. Ramalingam to talk about educational tours to NASA.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Good afternoon, everyone. First, I would like to thank our US Consulate for giving this opportunity to our students. First, to come over here, because as ma'am said, this is your first visit. Please come repeatedly. The idea of bringing all here is because you have to know about US education, what they are doing, because here a lot of very valuable materials are here. So students who are all here, please come again. And it's a great opportunity with the help of US Education, Mrs. Maya ma'am, Regional Officer, Aparna Chandrasekharan ma'am, and Shanti ma'am, our digital side, Dipti Kumar ma'am, and Press Officer. I thank every one of you for this great opportunity. Also, we have sent information more than 200 schools all over India today. A lot of people are logging now. From all over India, all top schools, international schools, even medium schools. We are also encouraging whoever interested in science, even small or medium schools. So we have sent the link to a lot of schools. So we are expecting more here. And it's a great opportunity because of the education technology, we can able to interact with our Don Thomas, who is in the US right now. We are going to interact with him. We have taken students, more than 4,000 students so far, to NASA. The great thing is it's an inspiring thing. Whenever almost half of the students here already, they came to NASA with us. They are meeting the NASA astronaut. They like to become a NASA astronaut. Also, in NASA, not only just a theoretical thing. They are doing experiments. They are learning something like a spacewalk or rocket simulator is there. And they have a very good opportunity to see all the launching pads over there. More than 150 launching pads are in Kennedy Space Center. So these are all inspiring things, and also they're meeting the astronaut, lunch with astronaut program or astronaut encounter. In one of the such program, I met Mr. Don Thomas, Vincent Scott, and also Mr. James Neal. We met 3 astronauts, and all 3 astronauts are helping us right now. Really, they are interested in bringing this space science thing for our students in India. And already we have done a lot of online programs, our students here. And also another great thing is that Don Thomas is going to visit India. He's going to visit around 6 cities, including Chennai. He'll be in Chennai on August 28th. He'll be here in Savita University. Then next day, he's visiting Vellore, very popular V8 University. Then next day, he'll be in Park Engineering College in Coimbatore. Then next day, he's in Nagarkoil, Excel Group of Schools. Then Trivandrum, Cochin, Bangalore, and Hyderabad. He's traveling. Then 5th, he's flying out of the country. He'll be here for 8 to 10 days, including the week of. He'll be here for 10 days. These are all great opportunity for our students to meet him in person. And also, whenever I'm saying about this moon landing, we are celebrating 50th year. It's all about students. What you have to learn is we can able to get success after so many struggles. We will get failures. We will go through failures, lot of failures, but finally, definitely we can achieve our dream. That's what that is a message we are every time. whenever we are visiting NASA, that's a message. I'm hearing that message. For example, Atlantis space shuttle. It's a reusable space shuttle. It launched like a rocket and it landed like an aeroplane. It's a reusable rocket. No one can think about that. How we can. But when students are there and seeing the Atlantis space shuttle, it's an amazing movie about Atlantis space shuttle over there. And so. Whatever you think in this age, it is possible. Only thing is we have to believe it. That's a message we have to take it on this day also. All about when we are celebrating this moon landing day. So once again, I thank all our officers here in the US Consulate for this wonderful opportunity for all our students here, and also for the students who are all logging through online from all over India. I thank you so much. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Ramalingam, for that insight into educational tours to NASA. Moving on. From the eternal pondering over extraterrestrial life forms to the study of the universe and its complexities, from creating the safest design and the actual manufacturing and maintenance of a spacecraft, to the ethical and legal questions about planetary travel and human settlement on planets, the subject of space is vast and encompasses a wide-ranging fields of study. These include not only the popular majors and the well-known ones like aerospace and aeronautical engineering, electronics and communications engineering, astronomy, engineering physics, or material sciences and planetary sciences. But there are many other interdisciplinary fields which also impact the study of space. And these include astrobiology, space medicine, cosmology, space architecture, space law, forensic astronomy, and even nutrition. The possibilities of study are as endless as space itself. If you are looking for information on US higher education, then Education USA is your official source of information on higher education. Education USA is a US Department of State network with 400 plus advising centers in 180 countries. In India, there are 7 Education USA centers. Of these, 5 centers in the city of Delhi, Mumbai, Chennai, Kolkata, and Hyderabad are hosted by the Binational Center US-India Educational Foundation, while 2 others in the cities of Bengaluru and Ahmedabad are hosted by private trusts. The United States is home to 4,700 accredited educational institutions, and many of these offer a world-class education related to the study of space at the undergraduate and graduate level. Depending on your level of study, you may choose to attend a community college, a liberal arts and science college, a women's only college, or a university across the 50 states of the United States. We advise students to start early, as the university application timeline may take anywhere from 12 to 18 months of preparation. The 5 steps to US study as outlined here can serve as a guideline for your preparations. US universities look at the holistic profile of students when reviewing their applications. If you are applying for a bachelor's degree or an undergraduate degree, as it is called in the US, then not only should you have a good academic record, but your profile should also exhibit active involvement in extracurricular and community service activities. If you are applying for a master's degree or a graduate degree, as it is called in the US, you should be focused on doing research, publishing papers, maybe doing internships and projects, of course, and also having a good academic profile. If you are currently studying in grade 9 or 10 in high school or in the second year of your bachelor's degree in India, then this is the ideal time for you to visit the Education USA Center here at the US Consulate General in Chennai and learn more about studying in the US. You may connect with Education USA through our website, which is educationusa.state.gov, or our Facebook page or YouTube page, which is Education USA India. You can also connect with Education USA via email or phone, the contacts for which will be shared in the next slide. And finally, you may also download our recently launched Education USA India mobile application, or the mobile app, to learn more about US higher education. So these are, as stated on the slide over here, these are the contact information for the Education USA Center in Chennai. And you may please make a note of these contacts and reach out to us if you have any questions about studying in the US. With that, I will now move on to the next segment of the program, I invite Ms. Kathleen Hosey, Press Officer, U.S. Consulate General, Chennai, to talk about the event and to introduce Dr. Don Thomas.
Good afternoon and vanakkam. My name is Kathleen Hosey. I'm the Information Officer here at the U.S. Consulate General in Chennai. And as a U.S. diplomat, it is one of the most exciting months in my career to be serving here at the U.S. Consulate General in Chennai because we are celebrating month-long the 50th anniversary of the Apollo 11 moon landing. And not only that, if it couldn't get better, we are celebrating the successful launch of Chandrayaan-2, which happened earlier this week on Monday. And we are watching with great excitement as Chandrayaan-2 approaches the south pole of the moon for a successful landing. We hope that Chandrayaan-2's mission and landing on the south pole of the moon will also inform our U.S. Artemis mission to send a man and a woman to the moon in 2024. And on behalf of the United States, we look forward to expanding our cooperation with India as part of our greater commitment to strengthening strategic partnership. So Apollo 11 occurred, as we discussed, 50 years ago on July 20th, 1969.
Muted on your end, so I cannot hear you.
Comms check. Can you hear me now, sir?
I got you now. It went mute about 20 minutes ago.
Well, it's an honor to speak with you, sir. I was just explaining to our audience in person and online how excited we are here to host you as our virtual presenter, but also to celebrate the larger anniversary of the Apollo 11 moon landing, as well as the successful launch of Chandrayaan-2, which is heading to the lunar South Pole early September. For this audience of young STEM students who hopefully have a future ahead of them in the field of space exploration, it is a great honor to welcome today's speaker, U.S. Astronaut Don Thomas. And if I may share with you a little bit of his incredible biography, I will start with what stood out to me the most. U.S. astronaut Don Thomas, during his 4 missions to space, spent a total of 44 days in space and orbited the Earth 692 times. He was born in Cleveland, Ohio, received his Bachelor of Science in Physics from Case Western Reserve University, and then he went on to Cornell University, one of our nation's best universities, in my opinion, to receive a Master of Science degree and a doctorate in Materials Science and Engineering. He was selected for NASA's 13th group of NASA astronauts in 1990 and went on to fly on 4 space shuttle missions: aboard Columbia in 1994, aboard Discovery in 1995, and aboard Columbia on 2 other missions in 1997. Thereafter, he served as the NASA's Director of Operations in Russia. And from 2003-2006, he was the International Space Station program scientist, directing and planning the experiments performed on the International Space Station. From 2007 to 2015, Astronaut Thomas headed the Hackerman Academy of Math and Science at Towson University, an outreach initiative targeting elementary, middle, and high school students to encourage them to pursue studies in the field of math, science, and engineering. And today, we are very grateful that he is a professional speaker, reaching out to students, not just in the United States, but here in India, and sharing his expertise and also his inspiration, telling us all to reach for the stars. Thank you, Astronaut Don Thomas, and the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody.
Hey, I'd like to thank Gopher Guru and NASA Educational Tours for helping organize this, along with Education USA and the U.S. Consulate in Chennai. My mother used to work at the U.S. Embassy up in New Delhi, and although I never got to visit her when she was working there, I've got close ties, and I had the great pleasure to visit India on 2 occasions. I was in Mumbai about 3 years ago, and I look forward to coming back to your country in the near future. So, as you heard, my name is Don Thomas. I had the amazing opportunity to fly on 4 space shuttle missions. And what I'm going to do this afternoon is share with you a little bit about what it's like to live and work in space. We'll talk about how we eat, sleep, and exercise up there. I'll show you a few pictures, some of my favorite views of the Earth taken from space. And we'll talk about the landing. And then after that, we'll open it up for questions. So with that, let me go ahead and share my screen here. And hold on, I need to... 1 second. And can you see my screen here?
Oh, yeah. Yes, sir, we can see your screen.
Okay, very good. So I will go ahead and get started. Hold on, I'm having some problems here advancing my slides. Okay, does anybody know who this is? Any of our students recognize this individual?
Rakesh Sharma.
The student said Rakesh Sharma.
Yes, yeah, you got it exactly right. Rakesh Sharma, first Indian in space back in 1984. Very, very good. How about this individual? She's pretty well known, isn't she?
The student said Kalpana Chawla.
Yeah, first Indian woman in space, and I knew Kalpana very well. We shared an office together. She always
The student says she's Sunita Williams.
Boy, you guys are very good. Sunita Williams, exactly right. The anniversary of the Apollo moon landing together. So these are just, I wanted to review and see how much you guys knew about Indian astronauts, and you are very sharp. This is a good group we have today. How about this group?
Buzz Aldrin.
Yeah, these
Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins is what the students are saying.
Neil Armstrong there on the left, Mike Collins in the center, and Buzz Aldrin on the right. And as we mentioned, on July 16th, 1969, a little over 50 years ago, they launched from the Kennedy Space Center aboard their Saturn V rocket, heading to the moon. And on July 20th, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin got inside the lunar lander. They separated from Mike Collins in the command module, and they began their descent down to the surface of the moon. They landed successfully, and it was a few hours later where Neil Armstrong took the first step on the moon. It was at 10:56 p.m. Eastern Time in the United States, so it was early in the morning over in India at that time. And this is a picture of Buzz Aldrin coming down the ladder towards the lunar surface. Here's a picture of that Neil Armstrong took of Buzz Aldrin standing on the lunar surface. And if you look carefully in the visor of the picture there, this is what it looks like. And right there is Neil Armstrong. It's one of the only pictures we have of Neil Armstrong on the moon. He had the camera on his spacesuit, so there are very few pictures of him on the moon. But this is one, his reflection in Buzz Aldrin's visor as he was taking this picture. We set up a lot of science experiments. There's a seismometer. There's a little reflector so that they could bounce laser signals off the moon to measure the distance. But the astronauts were on the moon for just a little over 2 hours, and then they came back inside their lunar module. Here's a picture of Neil Armstrong once he's back inside the lunar module at the end of their spacewalk. He looks a little tired. He's a little dirty with all the moon dust, but he's got a smile on his face. Mission accomplished. Then the next day, they blasted off the moon, and Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong rendezvoused back with Mike Collins. And this is the picture that Mike Collins took. In the background, you see the Earth, and then in the front, you see the lunar module with Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong. And Mike Collins says this is a picture of everybody he knows in the whole universe is in this picture. And just 50 years ago yesterday, they landed in the Pacific Ocean. And we had our recovery crew there to help get them out of the capsules, bring them back to an aircraft carrier, and we brought them back ultimately to Houston, Texas then. So just 50 years ago yesterday, they were out in the Atlantic or Pacific Ocean, as you see here. They were in quarantine for 3 weeks to make sure they didn't have any moon germs. And this is a picture of a world tour they did following their program. They were quarantined. They went around the world. I think they visited 35 countries in 40 different days just to share the celebration with everybody around our planet, because this was truly an event for all of humanity, not just for the United States, not just for Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, but for the entire planet Earth. And I want to share this picture with you. This is Neil Armstrong and his wife, and that's me and my wife, Simona. This is back in 1997. I invited Neil Armstrong to come down to my launch. He was from the state of Ohio, and I'm from Ohio. So I wrote him a letter, invited him to launch, and he agreed. He said, I'll be there. And the day before our launch, I got to spend about an hour with Neil Armstrong, just visiting with him. And that was one of the greatest moments of my life, just to spend an hour with somebody as famous as Neil Armstrong. This is a picture of Mr. Armstrong and his wife Carol watching my launch. So as probably you know there's Neil Armstrong. And at the tip of that smoke column, that's me there. So this is one of my favorite pictures of me and Neil Armstrong together. So that was the 50th anniversary of Apollo 11. Now I want to tell you a little bit about my background and how I became an astronaut. You know, I wanted to be an astronaut since I was 6 years old. When I was just 6, the United States launched our first American astronaut to space. And at my elementary school, they brought all of our students to the gymnasium. I sat on the floor and watched a small black and white TV. And as soon as our astronaut was in space, I remember sitting there saying, I want to do that. So ever since I was a little boy, I knew I wanted to be an astronaut. I wanted to ride on a rocket. I wanted to experience zero gravity floating around up there. So I always knew what I wanted to do. the problem is, well, how do you get there? How do you become an astronaut? And as a young boy, I wasn't quite sure how to do this. We only had 7 American astronauts at that time. But the one thing I recognized early on was it was going to be very difficult. There's a lot of competition. Thousands of people apply to be astronauts, and then only a small handful are selected. So I knew as a young boy, my only shot at becoming an astronaut would have to involve me working hard and doing my best in school every single day. And that's what I did in all my subjects, in math and science, but reading, art, music, history, gym, whatever I worked on, I always gave it my best effort. After high school, I went on to college and got my bachelor's degree in physics, and that's the minimum degree you need to become an astronaut, a 4-year college degree in math, science, engineering, or the medical field. But again, I knew the competition was going to be tough. So I stayed in college, I went to Cornell University, and I got my master's and then my PhD, my doctorate in engineering. After 9.5 years of college, I got out. I took a job with a company called AT&T Bell Laboratories doing research work for them. And this was in the early 1980s, just about when NASA was starting to launch the space shuttles. So my timing turned out to be perfect on all of this. And NASA selects new astronauts every 3 or 4 or 5 years. They'll pick a small group of 10, 15, or 20. And 2 years after I got out of college, NASA put that announcement out. They needed new astronauts. I was all excited. I wrote to them. I got an application form, filled it out, sent it back in. And guess what happened? They turned me down. They said, no thanks. I didn't give up. I decided I'd try again. And 2 years later, there was another astronaut selection. I sent my application in. And then that second time, I got turned down again. And at this point, I realized I need to do more to get noticed by NASA. I wasn't even getting close in the competition. So I carefully studied the backgrounds of the individuals that were getting into the program, of the astronauts that NASA was selecting. I wanted to see, what do they have that I don't have? What am I missing? What background, what education, what experiences? And by studying that, I learned a few things. The first was, most of the astronauts that NASA was selecting, they already had some flying experience. So I started taking flying lessons and got my pilot's license. Most of the astronauts they were selecting had some parachuting or skydiving experience. So I learned to do that as well. I also taught a university course. That seemed to be experience NASA was looking for. So I worked on those activities, and 3 years later, there was another astronaut selection. I sent my application in, and this time NASA called me up and they invited me down to the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas for a week of medical testing and an interview. And out of the thousands of people that apply to be astronauts, NASA will select 100 individuals. They bring them to Houston, Texas, and you spend a full week on a very thorough medical exam, and then there's a 1-hour interview. I passed all the medical exams. I went out to the interview, and that went very well. And at the end of the week, I went back to my job, and I thought, boy, that couldn't have gone any better for me. And I just sat there and waited to see, did I make it or not? And I was back at my job about a week or so when some of my friends started calling me up from across the United States. And they called up and they said, hey, Don, the police have been calling about you. Let me tell you, if the police are ever calling about you, it's either really good or really bad, right? In this case, it was very good. NASA was doing a security background check on me, and they looked into my background. Whatever city I lived in, they would check the police records to see if I'd ever been in trouble with the law. Then they met with all the bosses from all my companies, whatever company I worked for from high school on. They talked to my former bosses and asking them, what kind of worker was I? How did I treat the coworkers? Did I show up to work on time? And then they went up and down the streets in any neighborhood, wherever I lived, talking to the neighbors, asking, what kind of person was I? And how did I treat people in the neighborhood? And when I heard this was going on, I thought this is a great sign. I didn't think NASA could be doing this to all 100 individuals that they were interviewing. I figured they must have selected their astronauts, and this is the final security check to make sure you're good to go before they announce the names. So I was pretty excited, and it was about 2 months later, I got the phone call from NASA. They called me up and said, Don, thank you very much for applying. We had a lot of good candidates. We did not select you, but good luck in the future. And I tell you, I was devastated. I thought I had made it in, but here for the third time, NASA said no. And so at this point, I thought, you know, it's time to give up on this silly dream of mine. I gave it my best shot. I worked hard. I tried 3 times, but NASA just didn't want me. And I decided I would go to bed, get a good night's sleep, and then in the morning, I would put together a new plan for my career that did not involve being an astronaut. I went to bed that night, and then the next morning when I woke up, the very first thought that popped into my head was, I still want to be an astronaut. So I asked myself, are there any more of these little things I can do to improve my background, to make myself a better candidate? And again, by studying who NASA was selecting, it was pretty clear that most of the individuals they were picking for the astronaut program were already working down at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. So I moved down there. I got a job with NASA as an engineer working on the space shuttle program. I did that for 3 years. Then there was another astronaut selection. I sent my application in. I got called up for the medical testing and the interviews once again, and that all went very well. And then it was about 3 months later, I got another phone call from NASA. And this time they said, Don, are you still interested in being an astronaut? Because we'd like to offer you the job. I said yes. I hung up the phone, and for the next 10 minutes, I was jumping up and down, yelling and screaming. I was so excited because I knew I made it into the program. So the number one lesson I have learned in my life is to never give up. I almost gave up on my dream after NASA turned me down that third time. But I learned, don't give up. Keep working hard. You know, whatever dream you have in your life, don't give up on that dream. It takes hard work. It takes time to get there. The first time I made it to space, I was 39 years old. And 39 years old is pretty much an old man, right? So for all of you there today, just remember, work hard, do your best every single day, and never, never give up on your dream. And I went from this little boy just dreaming of going into space to getting assigned on 4 space shuttle missions. This is the crew for my last flight. And the last time I was in space was 22 years ago. 22 years ago this month, I was aboard Space Shuttle Columbia with this crew. We've got 2 military pilots in the front row with the helmets that help us fly the shuttle. On our left-hand side with the helmet is our commander. His name is Jim Halsell. He was an Air Force test pilot. On the right-hand side with the helmet is our pilot. Her name is Susan Still. And Susan was a pretty unique individual. She's only the 2nd woman to pilot the space shuttle. And Susan was one of our country's top Navy fighter pilots. So it was a great opportunity for me to fly with her on this mission. And then in the background, we've got 5 of our science astronauts. We're called mission specialists. Our job is to do the science. We work the robotic arm on the shuttle if there's a need for that. We deploy satellites and do spacewalks. So we each have our area of specialty on the crew. You probably don't recognize that guy on the far right-hand side, but that's the way I used to look 22 years ago before gray hair, wrinkles, and a few pounds around the middle. And there you see the space shuttle on the launch pad. I took this picture the night before my first mission. Went out there about midnight or so with another one of the astronauts. And it was pretty amazing just to stand there at the base of your space shuttle, all lit up with those bright lights against that pitch black sky. And as I stood there gazing up at it, I had incredible butterflies in my stomach. A little piece of me was nervous, a little piece of me was scared, but my main emotion was one of great excitement because I knew 12 hours from when I'm sitting inside this thing, 12 hours from when I'm taking this picture, I'd be sitting inside blasting off on my first mission. And I almost couldn't believe where I was and what I was about to do. So they bring the astronauts out here on launch morning. We take an elevator up the side there, and right near the nose of the shuttle, there's a little walkway or bridge we walked across, and we crawl through a round hatch or door to get inside the shuttle. There I am in my launch suit 3 hours before liftoff. I've taken the elevator or the lift up, and then in the background you see Space Shuttle Columbia there. and they strap us into our seats one at a time. So I'm just hanging out here waiting. When it's my turn, they'll call out and say, hey, Don, we're ready for you. I'll turn that corner to the left, walk down that access arm, and at the end of it there, you see the round door or hatch for the shuttle. Before I climb inside, these two gentlemen in the white suits there will help me put on a parachute. We'll get the helmet on, gloves on. Once everything's all set, I get on my hands and knees, crawl on that white board, crawl inside through the round hatch, and then there's people there to help strap me into my seat. We're laying down on our backs for liftoff. We've got shoulder harnesses and seat belts. They strap us in good and tight because there's a lot of shaking and vibration during launch. You don't want to bounce out of your seat and hurt yourself or damage any equipment. So they strap us in good and tight. Once that's all done, they close and seal this side door, and then everybody moves away from us about 5 kilometers. And it gets very quiet inside the shuttle up until 6 seconds before liftoff. At that point, 3 big engines at the tail of the shuttle start coming up to full power. 6 seconds later, we light those big white side rockets called solid rocket boosters. And the instant they light, boom, immediately you take off. And laying on my back in my seat, I could hear the roar of the engines. I could feel all this shaking and vibration going on. And right at the moment of liftoff, I felt a push in my back. And it felt to me as if somebody had their hand right in the middle of my back and that they were pushing me up into the sky. And that's what the space shuttle's doing. It's literally pushing us, tossing us up in the air. This picture is taken just 4 seconds after liftoff. We're going 200 kilometers an hour already. So we don't ease off the launch pad. It's literally boom, and we accelerate faster and faster every second. This picture is taken from a NASA chase plane a few miles away, and we launch right along the coastline of Florida. All the blue you see in the background is the Atlantic Ocean. You see our 2 shuttle launch pads. The launch pad that this space shuttle is launching from is the very same launch pad that Neil Armstrong launched to the moon on Apollo 11 50 years ago. And today we have a commercial company called SpaceX with Elon Musk, and they're launching from this launch pad as well, so it's a very historic launch pad. 2 minutes into the flight, we're about 40 kilometers up in the air, and after just 2 minutes, we're traveling at a speed of about 4,000 kilometers an hour. And our 2 side rockets have used up their fuel. They separate off to the side. They would fall back to Earth, and we would recover these out in the Atlantic Ocean and clean them up, load them up with new fuel, and we'd use them again on another mission. So at this point, we have our space shuttle at the center of the picture. Those 3 bright white dots that you can see are the 3 big engines that are burning. Just to the right of that, that fuzzy patch you see is our big fuel tank, and that's going to take us the rest of the way to space. 8.5 minutes after liftoff, the engine shut down. It's perfectly quiet, and then there's a big kaboom. We fire some explosive bolts, and the space shuttle separates from our fuel tank. And that fuel tank would just fall back in the atmosphere and burn up like a shooting star. It's the only part of the space shuttle we did not reuse. And that would leave us then with the space shuttle orbiting the Earth. It only takes 8.5 minutes to get to space. That was always amazing to me. I'll bet it took many of you more than 8.5 minutes to get to the Consulate there this afternoon. And then that short period of time, you could end up being 300 kilometers above the Earth. And at this point, we're traveling at a speed of 27,000 kilometers an hour. That turns out to be 7 kilometers a second. So imagine how fast you could get home today after this presentation if you could travel 7 kilometers a second. Most of you would be home within a second or 2. And we travel so fast that we go around the Earth, we go all the way around in only an hour and a half. On 3 of my missions in the back of the payload bay of the space shuttle, we had a science module that you see in this picture. And it's very similar to one of the modules we have up on the International Space Station today. And once we got to space, we'd float through a tunnel, go back and do a lot of science experiments. And typically these science missions were 2 weeks long. This is Chaki Bukai, the first Japanese woman in space. And I flew with her on my first mission. And in space, you don't walk around like we're used to doing here on Earth. When you want to move around in space, it just takes a little push with your finger, and you go sailing through the air like Superman or Superwoman. And you'll keep sailing until you hit a wall or until you reach out to stop your motion. If you like doing somersaults, you can start flipping in the air. And you go round and round all day until you get tired. So what do you think? Does it sound like fun in space?
Yes.
We have a lot of fun. It's a blast floating around up in space. Here's a picture of Susan, our pilot, and Susan's typing on a laptop computer there. And I want to point out one feature. If you look at her toes, you'll see she's got her toes hooked on that vertical gold pole. If she didn't do that with her toes, every time she would hit the keyboard on the computer, what do you think might happen? She would go bouncing off. It's one of Newton's laws. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. But if she just pinches that bar a little bit with her toes, she can stay in position, float in the air, and type on the computer all day long. So space is a really fun, comfortable environment to be in. And in space, there's no up or down. I think we pretty much agree which way is up and which way is down here on Earth. But in space, there is no up or down. And you know here on Earth, if you stand on your head, all the blood rushes to your head because of gravity. I'm sure you felt the pressure from that. In space, that doesn't happen. You go upside down, you feel totally normal. And in space, wherever your head is pointed, that direction is up for you. Wherever your feet are pointed, that's down. So this is Nancy and Kevin on my second flight. Nancy's looking at Kevin there saying, hey, Kevin, you're upside down. Well, Kevin's looking right back at her saying, no, you're upside down. In his little world, she's the one that appears to be upside down. So in space, you never feel like you're upside down. It's everybody else in the room. Now in space, we don't have a refrigerator, freezer, microwave oven, nothing like that. So most of our food is freeze-dried. And it comes in small plastic packages like you see in this picture. And to prepare a meal, we bring that food package over to a food station. The needle will poke inside that package. We can inject some hot water. That dry, hard food will absorb that water, soften up, and after a few minutes, it's ready to eat. You know, and we just cut that package open with a pair of scissors and eat it with a normal fork or spoon. The food is okay. It's not delicious, but it's okay. We have macaroni and cheese, spaghetti and meat sauce. We've got hamburger patties that are hard like a rock, but when you add water to them, they soften up, and then they're almost edible. Now, for drinking in space, we can't drink out of a glass or bottle like we're used to doing here on Earth. If you had a bottle of water in space, you take the top off, you tip it upside down, nothing's going to happen without gravity. So we can't drink out of a normal glass or bottle, so instead in space, we drink out of foil pouches. And we bring that foil pouch to the food station, and these pouches have powdered orange juice, powdered lemonade, powdered coffee, powdered tea, and we can inject water into them. We mix up that powder a little bit with our fingers, then we poke a straw into it, and then you just squeeze it into your mouth. And on the right-hand side of the picture, you'll see a little drink bag there with a bag of lemonade that somebody made. They velcroed it to the wall to keep it from floating away. These are just like juice boxes or juice bags that you may have sometimes at lunch. In this picture, I've got a bag of tropical punch, red juice there. And you see the red straw with some of the juice in it. And I squeezed the bag of punch, and some of the juice got away from me. And what looks like a red golf ball in front of my face is actually a blob of tropical punch. Any liquid in space will form a perfectly round ball. It's from a force we call surface tension. It drives it into a sphere, and it'll just float there in front of you. You can take a straw and drink that, and you'll see the blob get smaller and smaller and smaller and disappear. Sleeping's a little different in space. The inside of the space shuttle is pretty small, and we didn't have dedicated bedrooms. So when it's time to go to bed, we would take a sleeping bag, attach it to the wall with a few clips, and then you just float up there, slip inside, zip it up, and you go to bed. We wear the dark eye shades that you see in this picture because we go around the Earth every hour and a half. And we get 45 minutes of daylight, 45 minutes of nighttime. If you don't want the sun coming in your eyes all the time, you need to wear the eye shades. And you see how our astronaut has his arms crossed across his chest there? You know, here on Earth, if you totally relax, your arms will fall to your side. But in space, if you totally relax, the arms will float right in front of you, and your hands will be right in front of your face as you're sleeping. So can you imagine you wake up in the morning, you open your eyes, and you have two hands floating in front of your face? Our astronauts are not that brave, so we tuck our arms in like you see in this picture. And the real reason we do it, there's a lot of cables and switches there on the right-hand side, and you don't want your arm floating over there in the middle of the night, hitting a switch, bumping a cable, doing some damage. So we try to get nice and secure like you see here. And they give us about 7 hours a day to sleep, just like we do here on Earth. Now for cleaning up in space, we don't have a shower, we don't have a bathtub, we don't even have a sink like you have in your kitchen or bathroom at home. So when it comes time to clean up, we have some of those drink bags that I showed you, and instead of having powdered juice in them, a few of them will have powdered soap. And to take a bath here, all we do is inject some hot water into that powder. We mix up a bag of hot soapy water, we can put it on a cloth and give ourselves a sponge bath. That's how we clean up in space. For washing our hair, we've got a special shampoo that you see here. It's called No Rinse Shampoo. And this was developed for people in the hospital who can't get out of bed to take a shower. And it's very easy to use, doesn't require any water. All you do is squirt some of this shampoo in your hair, you work up a lather, and then you take a towel, pat it dry, and you're done. I took this picture, I love the bottom line on the bottom there. It may be a little hard to read, but it says, for beautifully clean, full-bodied hair. And I want to share with you what that looks like in space. So here you see Susan, our pilot, and anybody with longer hair, it's gonna float all over, as you see here. I'm not picking on Susan, even my short hair floats all over. Do you guys believe that? Do you think even my short hair would float?
Yes.
Yeah, it would. And so we say that every day in space is a bad hair day. And I want to show you the granddaddy of all bad hair days in space, and that's right here. This is Marsha Ivins, one of our astronauts. She flew 5 times in space, had really long hair, as you see here. She wouldn't leave it like this normally, otherwise for the rest of us it'd be like scuba diving through seaweed. She'd put it in a ponytail, but just did this for the picture. Now exercise in space is very important. Here on Earth, we're walking around all day, we're using our leg muscles, we're carrying our books. But in space, we don't use our muscles at all. To move around, it's a little push with our finger, and we just sail through the air. And everything is weightless in space. I can lift in a car with one finger in space. So we don't use our muscles at all, and it's very important exercise. So we have this bicycle we ride every day for about 45 minutes. We get your heart muscle going, get your leg muscles working, so when you come back to Earth at the end of the mission, you're still in good shape. Do you know what this is by chance? This is the toilet on board the space shuttle, and it's in a small closet area, very similar to an airline toilet. We have a curtain that goes across the front, like a shower curtain for privacy, and it has a white toilet seat there at the center of the picture, like our toilets here on Earth. But here on Earth, we use gravity to collect the waste material. You can probably imagine what would happen in zero gravity. So this toilet is like a porta potty or portaloo you may see at a football game or a construction site. And in the bowl of the toilet, we have giant fans. And to activate the toilet, there's a little white switch there, a knob off to the left. You push it forward, it activates the fans, and it sucks air from the toilet seat downward. So we use that down rush of air in the bowl of the toilet to keep all the waste material down. And that is the secret of using the space toilet. And in space, everything floats around up there in zero gravity. If you're brushing your teeth, you can let go of your toothbrush and toothpaste, float across the shuttle, get a drink of water. When you come back, they should be floating in the air right where you let go of them. I'll wrap it up by showing you some pictures of the Earth. And whenever an astronaut has a free moment, we float to the window to watch the Earth go by. I have a map in my hand here. I'm trying to figure out where we are around planet Earth. And I'm looking out one of the windows there towards the tail end of the shuttle. And I took a camera right up to that window, I pressed it against the glass, and I took a picture so you can see exactly what my eyes are seeing. And this is the view I'm looking at out the back. So that's the beautiful blue Earth from 300 kilometers above. All the blue that you see in the background there is the Pacific Ocean. The white areas are puffy clouds. That peninsula coming down on the right-hand side is Baja California. It's part of Mexico. And I want to show you one feature here. If you look very carefully at the bottom edge of the Earth, you may see a very thin blue line either to the right or to the left of the space shuttle. Can you see that blue line today?
Yes.
And does anybody, can you guess what that blue line is?
Somebody is saying ozone layer. It should be loud.
One of the students said, is it the ozone layer?
It is part of the ozone layer, but it's our atmosphere. It's a whole atmosphere.
Right.
On a nice sunny day in Chennai, you look up at that blue sky and it looks like it goes on forever and ever. From space, we see the atmosphere edge on. And it looks just as you see here, like a paper-thin layer. Most of the air protecting us here on planet Earth is in that first 20 or 30 kilometers or so. And that's about it. Which is why when we pollute the air, it can have such a major impact on our planet. Here you see a giant hurricane or typhoon. This was over the Pacific Ocean, and this was a big one, about 600 kilometers across. And we flew right over the center of the typhoon. Does anybody know what that's called?
You have to be louder.
The eye.
Yes, we call it the eye, and from 200 miles up, I could look down, 200 miles up, I could look down the window, look outside, and right into the eye and see the blue water of the Pacific Ocean. The next picture will show you the eye from directly overhead, right there. The eye is about 20 kilometers across, and as you know, in the eye you get very light winds, just a few, kilometer an hour breeze. But, maybe 10 kilometers away, you have the eye wall where you get the highest winds. This was a powerful Category 3 hurricane. It had top speeds of about 200 kilometers an hour. Here's a volcano venting steam. This is in the South Pacific near Indonesia. And there on the left-hand side, near the center of the picture, you see a volcanic crater half underwater. So these are all volcanic islands in that part of the world. And in this picture, you see the Himalaya mountains. And right at the very center, you see the top of Mount Everest there. And I've seen the top of Mount Everest about 25 times during my missions. I call it the lazy man's way to see the top of Mount Everest. And no climbing involved, just cruising overhead as I look out the window. But I use this picture to illustrate some of the things I got to see and do during my career. I've never climbed Mount Everest, never will in my lifetime, but I've seen the top of it many times. I've seen the Great Barrier Reef off Australia. I've seen the Amazon rainforests down in Brazil and South America. I've seen Mount Kilimanjaro, big volcanic peak in Africa poking up through the clouds. So many amazing sights around planet Earth. Does anybody recognize this beautiful part of planet Earth? Any guesses? Let me put in a few landmarks here for you. So there you see Chennai, and you can see your international airport right there. Really beautiful to see from space. And you see all those lights in Chennai? Do you know what those lights are from? That's all of you staying up late studying, right? Or maybe your teachers are staying up late grading your papers. And here you see a sunrise from space. Because we go around the Earth every hour and a half, we see 16 sunrises and 16 sunsets every 24-hour day in space. And they're all beautiful. I would try to watch as many of these as I could. Well, at the end of our mission, it's time to come home. We fired 2 engines from the back of the shuttle, and it would slow our speed down, and we would begin our fall back to Earth. And 55 minutes later, we would end up landing back at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. touching down like an airplane, we would deploy a drag parachute out the back, and then we put the brakes on and just roll to a stop. And then we just sit and wait for them to open the hatch so we can get out. And typically it takes them an hour or so before they open the hatch and you can get out. And when you first come back from space, you feel like you weigh about 1,000 kilograms because you've been floating around in zero gravity for 2 weeks. And then when you come back to this pull of gravity, it felt so heavy for me. My arms were heavy, my legs were heavy, I was a little dizzy when I got back. And it took a day or so for the dizziness to go away, and maybe a week or so to get your muscle strength back, and then you're pretty much back to normal. So the space shuttles have all been retired. We still have the International Space Station orbiting the Earth. It's about 300 kilometers above the Earth, traveling at that same speed, about 27,000 kilometers an hour. And we have these 6 astronauts are up there. The ones with the stars have been up there for about 3 months. The other 3 astronauts just launched on Saturday. So we currently have 6 astronauts up there right now. And today NASA is building a new rocket called the Space Launch System, SLS. And this will be the biggest, most powerful rocket ever launched. And instead of flying our astronauts in space planes like the space shuttle, our astronauts will launch in capsules called Orion on top of the rocket. And this is what the Orion capsule looks like, and it'll hold 4 to 6 astronauts. Those astronauts will lay on their back during liftoff or launch, just like I did inside the space shuttle. But instead of landing like an airplane, the capsules will come down with parachutes and land in the ocean. The first test launch of this new rocket is a little more than a year away. We call it Exploration Mission Number 1. And this will not have any astronauts. It'll be unmanned. And what we're going to do is launch it from the Kennedy Space Center. We're going to send it to the moon. It'll orbit the moon for 10 days and come back. And if everything works well on that first mission, we're going to put astronauts on the very next flight and send them to the moon. So we're just a handful of years away from having astronauts orbiting the moon once again, which I think is pretty exciting. So where are we going to go with these new rockets and capsules? These are some of the destinations. As I mentioned, we want to go back to the moon and build a lunar base. We like to visit the asteroids. And we also like to go on to that red planet. What's that one called? Mars. Mars, exactly right. So let's take a look at a few of these missions here. Here's a mission to the moon building a lunar base. We'd like to learn to live independent of Earth, in preparation for our missions to Mars. Here's a mission to one of the asteroids. The scientists would like us to bring back pieces of these asteroids. These are early remnants of our solar system, maybe 4.5 billion years old. Here is a mission to one of the moons of Mars. Mars has 2 small moons, and I think it would be so amazing to be that astronaut in the lower right-hand corner. And you look over your shoulder behind you, you have the red planet Mars in the background. And about 20 to 25 years from now, we hope to land astronauts on the surface of Mars. And this is an artist's drawing of that today. You see our landing craft, and just to the right of it, you see the shadowy figure of the first 2 humans setting foot on Mars. And do you know who those astronauts are walking on Mars? Any guess? Do students have any idea who those astronauts are?
Perhaps the students in this audience here today?
You are exactly right. I am too old to go to Mars. 25 years from now, I'm going to be like 90 years old. NASA's not sending me to Mars. For the students there today, your parents are too old to go to Mars. And I suggest you never repeat this at school, but your teachers are too old to go to Mars. But our students here today are the perfect age. We call you the Mars generation. And it'll be somebody in your generation to be the first to set foot on Mars, which is why we say we need you. We need you, to be working hard at school, doing your best, because we're building the rockets today for these missions. We're designing new spacesuits. We're designing the habitats for Mars. And you, all of you, represent our next generation of scientists, engineers, technologists, and astronauts, explorers. And that's why we need you working hard, because you can very well be a part of these missions in the future. And we won't accomplish them unless you're working hard and doing your best every day in school here. So with that, I just want to say thank you very much. And I wanted to see if you had any questions there for me today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Don Thomas. It was the most fascinating and awe-inspiring talk. I'm sure our students would agree with me. I'm sure they're feeling very inspired. I'm sure they're feeling very inspired by your experiences and are already in their mind hoping that one day they will follow in your footsteps, perhaps to Mars, as you said. We will now open the floor for questions. I will call out the name of the student. I would request the student to introduce themselves. Please start with your name, the standard or class that you're studying in, the school you represent, and then please ask your question. I request the students to come up to the front where the microphone is here and to ask their question, please, right? I would first like to call Priyanka of Velamal. Please come forward.
Myself, Priyanka. I'm from Velamal West. If you were given another experience to travel in space, what would you like to explore this time?
Yeah, thank you for that great question. I always wanted to go to the moon. You know, Neil Armstrong landed on the moon when I was about your age. And I always dreamed of going to the moon and looking back at Earth and seeing it as a small ball, you know, blue ball floating in the blackness of space. So if I could go on one more mission, I would definitely vote to go to the moon. I'm also jealous of your youth here. I would love to go to Mars. You know, that's something I'm too old for, but it's something your generation will be doing. So I'm a little jealous of your youth there. But I think given one destination, it would have to be the moon for me.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas. Thank you, Priyanka. I next call upon Manisha to ask her question. Please come forward.
Hi sir, this is Manisha Bharti. I'm from TI Matriculation High Secondary School and I go for grade 12. My question is, can you tell us about the woodpecker flight?
Yeah, Manisha, that's a bit of a secret. I'm not sure I can tell you much about that, but I will do so. I don't know how you learned about that. You've done your research here. But on my second space shuttle mission, this is aboard Space Shuttle Discovery, the name that you see behind me here, just 1 week before our scheduled launch, a woodpecker attacked our big fuel tank. And the big orange tank on the space shuttle is made out of metal, and it's covered with 3 to 4 inches, you know, maybe 5 to 8 centimeters of foam insulation to protect the fuel, to keep it cold. And this woodpecker came in, and 1 week before our launch, it drilled 205 holes in the insulation in our fuel tank. So it delayed our mission 1 month. And while NASA had to go in there and fix the fuel tank and patch up all the holes. So because of that, I became known as a member of the woodpecker crew. And sadly, this is how I'm famous in my life. We had a lot of woodpecker jokes during that flight.
Thank you,
You've
Dr.
done your
Thomas.
research, Manisha. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas. Thank you, Manisha. I next call upon Sri Hari to come forward and ask his question.
Good morning, I'm Shriyari. I'm studying grade 11 at the Pupils Health Eco School. My question is, what do you think of the private space agencies in the role of Artemis program?
Yeah, the role of the private space companies that we have now, we've got Elon Musk and SpaceX, we've got Richard Branson, Virgin Galactic, we've got Jeff Bezos and Amazon, you know, he's got a company, Blue Origin, and we also got other commercial companies like Boeing. And we're paying these companies, like we're going to be paying SpaceX and Boeing to launch our astronauts up and down to the space station. You know, just later this year, early next year, we'll start doing it. And SpaceX has been working with NASA very closely, sending supplies up to the International Space Station. So I think these commercial companies, they are great partners for NASA. Some people characterize it as competition. It's NASA versus our commercial companies. That is not the case. We are really working together And I expect when we go to Mars, it's going to be a joint program. It's not just going to be NASA and the commercial companies, but I would envision this trip to Mars as being an international endeavor, very similar to our International Space Station. And it would be my dream that when we send those first astronauts to Mars, that they represent all of planet Earth. That it's not just the United States or China or Russia, but it represents all of us on planet Earth. So maybe we can have one of our students there today joining us on that mission to Mars. But the commercial companies will play a big role in helping us along the way.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas, and thank you, Srihari, for your question. I next call upon Aparna with her question.
Hello sir, this is Aparna from GT Aloha Vidya Mandir. And may I know, is there any other planet where the life form exists?
You know, we have had the astronauts go to the moon and brought back samples. We have not found any life on the moon. We've had rovers on Mars, and we have not found any life there either. There's only one place in the whole universe that we know for sure that life exists. And where is that? Earth, that is it, which is why we got to take really good care of our planet. But having said that, I do believe there's other life in the universe. You know, with the Hubble Space Telescope, NASA zoomed into a small part of the sky about the size of the disk of the full moon. And in that one small part of the sky, NASA discovered there were 15,000 galaxies. Each galaxy has 10 billion stars.
Wow.
We think every star has multiple planets like our sun does. And we think these galaxies are evenly distributed in the sky. So wherever you look in the sky, day or night, in roughly the area of the full moon, you're looking at 15,000 galaxies. So given those billions of galaxies, billions of stars in each of them, with multiple planets, I do think there's other life out there, but we have not found it yet. We are still searching for that. Another kind of good candidates for searching for life in our solar system, some of the moons of Jupiter and Saturn are ice covered, and we know they have liquid water oceans underneath. So right now, NASA is thinking about missions to land a spacecraft on these moons, drilling into the ice to get down to the oceans to see if there's any small bacteria, any life there that exists on any of these other worlds. So we're still searching for other life in the universe. We have not found it yet, but we continue that search.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas, and thank you, Aparna. I next call upon Aparajita to come forward with her question.
I'm Aparajita, I'm in grade 8 and I'm coming from the GK World School. My question is, I'm keen to learn or study about the English literature. So do I still have the opportunity to be an astronaut or work in space science?
So what did you want to study? Say that one more time.
English literature. English literature.
Yes, understand. You know, right now our astronauts are mainly military pilots and scientists and engineers. That's the core of astronauts. When we go to Mars, you know, we're going to need not only military pilots and scientists and engineers, we're going to need some really good technicians, people that can fix things that break down. We're going to need medical doctors as well. And if we build a base on the moon or a base on Mars, we're going to need even a broader spectrum of people. So I can imagine, like, we have not had a program where we sent an artist or a writer to space, but they had NASA had plans to do that many years ago, but it never came to fruition. But that's maybe something. Once we build a colony and we want to expand the people living there, I think then there's perfect opportunities for somebody like yourself to travel to Mars or go to the moon, and you can help write about that experience, because usually astronauts, we don't have the vocabulary. We always say, boy, the Earth is beautiful. It looks beautiful. It's spectacular. We need somebody like you to express those thoughts in better words than most of the astronauts can provide.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas. You've given hope for those who are studying humanities and social sciences as well.
Very important fields.
Thank you. And thank you, Aparajita, for that lovely question. We next call upon Sabarish to ask his question.
Good morning, sir. I'm Sabrish from grade 7 and I'm coming from the GK World School. So, will spacecraft be an alternative to travel in aeroplanes in the near future, say after 50 years?
So you want to travel across the around the world, will we do so in airplanes or,
Yes.
or spacecraft?
Yes, sir.
You know, I don't know if it'll ever come to that. It's very expensive to launch a rocket. So there's been some ideas. Maybe we launch from Chennai and it would take maybe 25 minutes, 40 minutes to get to the United States. We could do that, but it's very, very expensive to do that. So I'm not sure that'll be feasible. But maybe someday we have space planes like that and we can get around the planet even sooner. Today, if I was going to travel to Chennai, and I will be there next month, it'll take me 18 to 20 hours to fly there. I would much prefer to get on a rocket and be there in maybe 35 minutes or 40 minutes. So maybe further in the future we do something like that. But right now it's just too expensive to just fly, you know, from point to point on planet Earth like that. But I can see you're thinking about the future here.
Exactly.
Thank you, sir.
Maybe Sabarish will come up with some plans for a rocket, that domestic rockets, if you can call them that. All right.
Exactly right.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas, and thank you, Sabarish. I next call upon S. Archana.
Hi sir, this is Archana. I am from Nahar Public School, grade 11. My question is, what might future aircrafts look like?
You know, our future aircraft or spacecraft?
Spacecrafts.
Future spacecraft, you know, we had the space shuttle. It looked a lot like an airplane, but we've gone back to the capsules, like I showed you the Orion capsule there. And the reason we do that, it's much safer to put the astronaut on top of the rocket. And in case the rocket blows up, we can pull the capsule and the astronauts free and try to save their lives. In the space shuttle where I was sitting, you know, I would just be maybe a few meters from million liters of explosive rocket fuel. So I think the future ones that you're going to see are going to be the capsules on top of rockets. And maybe further down the road, we come up with some more space planes. And I think you're going to see other spacecraft, much bigger ones, when we head to Mars and deeper into space. They're going to look more like some of the science fiction, like you know, Starship Enterprise from Star Trek in the future. So you may see things like that. For the next 10, 20 years, I would anticipate smaller capsules with the astronauts on board.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Dr. Thomas. And to Archana, one more question from a student, Indu Padmashri.
Greetings, sir. I'm Indu from grade 12 from the Pupil Savita Eco School. So we've now been all about international collaborations and student exchange programs and many such things. So what would your view be on private tourism on ISS? And also, what do you think are the risk concerns affiliated with it? And is it just a mere fundraising initiative?
Yeah, you know, space tourism up to the International Space Station, to be honest with you, I'm not too wild about that. When we have tourists come up to the space station, all work has to stop up there pretty much. And everybody kind of makes sure that our space tourists, you know, doesn't touch any critical switches, doesn't do anything dangerous up there. But I'm in favor of space tourism, not just up to the International Space Station, but going into space. And SpaceX will be launching space tourists. So will Richard Branson with his, you know, Virgin Galactic spaceships, and Jeff Bezos with Amazon, his Blue Origin company, will be sending space tourists up. And there's other companies that are building maybe space hotels, space habitats up there, especially for tourists. And you know, they'll be doing that, I think, in the next decade. During your lifetime, for sure, I think you'll have the opportunity to go to space on a commercial flight. It'll be much like an exotic vacation going to Antarctica, for example. There'll always be a risk with this. Going to space is always a little risky. You have so many millions of liters of explosive rocket fuel. and there's always a small chance that something could go wrong. Just like when you fly on a commercial plane today, there's always a risk that there's a problem. It's a very, very small risk with airplanes. With rockets, it's a little bit bigger risk, but maybe with our commercial companies, we can get them safer and safer and bring the costs down, and it'll be a relatively easy trip to go up to space.
Thank you very
My dream
much.
is everybody can get up to space. When I saw the beauty of the Earth with my own eyes from space, it forever changed how I view planet Earth. I saw that paper-thin atmosphere. I saw how fragile our planet is. And the more people that could get above the Earth to see with their own eyes what I saw, we'd have more people here on Earth trying to protect our planet, to keep it clean and safe for all of us in the future. So I'm all in favor of commercial space tourism for people going up there. And it would only take you 15 seconds. If you looked out the window from space for 15 seconds, it would forever change you and how you view our planet. So I hope you get the opportunity to travel to space in the near future. Maybe to Mars, maybe just orbiting the Earth to see the beauty on a nice vacation up there.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas, and thank you, Indu. I will now, Dr. Thomas, hand over to Julia Burleson, who will read out a few questions that we've received online on our WhatsApp group as well as from Facebook and YouTube.
Okay. The questions have been outstanding here so far today.
Hi, good afternoon, Dr. Thomas. The first question comes from RD International School, and they ask if you've experienced climate change in space.
You know, my missions, my 4 flights were over a period of just 3 years and a few weeks. So they were too short together to see dramatic changes in the Earth. But we can see that from space. We see the ice caps up at the North Pole. We see big, huge glaciers breaking off of Antarctica. So we can see huge changes that are occurring in the Earth from space. But my missions were just in a too short of a period where you really couldn't see the changes from one flight to another one. That's why I would love to go to space again to see the Earth, 20 years later after I last flew in space.
Thank you. And the second question comes from Sri Hara, who asks, what's your favorite chapter of your book, Orbit of Discovery?
Sridhara, that's a great question for me. They're all my favorite chapters because I wrote it. But I think the very first chapter is my favorite. And I think it's called the Woodpecker Attack, something like that. The first chapter is all about the woodpecker attacking our space shuttle, just to get you caught up into the book. Another favorite chapter is one that I wrote about looking back at planet Earth. And I think I titled it Columbus Was Right. And that's a reference to Columbus was right, the world is round and not flat, because there's many people that think the world is flat. But I have been around it 692 times. Our world is definitely round and not flat. And I describe much of the beauty of the Earth that I saw from space. So those are my 2 favorites. And thank you for bringing up my book there.
And the final question is, what advice do you have for aspiring astronauts?
For aspiring astronauts, I mean, this is where we started off the talk. You have to work hard and do your best every single day in school, in all your subjects. For sure, you want to work hard in math and science and engineering, but you want to be, good at literature. You want to be good at history, music. Always do your best. And the key is to never give up on your dreams. I first dreamed of going into space when I was 6 years old. And the first time I made it to space, I was 39. 39 years old for our students today. That's pretty much an old man, right? Not too bad. You are very polite. But these careers, many of the careers you'll pick, it will take time to get there. So be patient. Work hard, do your best every day. Never, never give up on your dream. If you're turned down for a job that you apply for, or you're turned down for medical school or law school, for whatever you want to do, don't give up. Look for ways you can improve yourself, just like I did. I took flying lessons. I learned to skydive. I taught a university course. I was constantly trying to make myself a better candidate. You can do the same thing. But the key is to never, ever give up. Keep working hard towards your dream.
Thank you so much, Dr. Thomas.
Thank you, Julia, for asking the online questions. Thank you again, Dr. Thomas, for answering them patiently. I now call upon Kathleen Hosey, Information Officer at the U.S. Consulate General, to give the closing remarks and to say thanks to Dr. Thomas.
Briefly, I want to thank the students gathered here today, their parents, their teachers, as well as the students watching us online. Thank you for your interest in this topic of space exploration and for joining us today and for your very thoughtful, well-researched questions. I want to thank my colleagues in Education USA for organizing today's live stream talk. We do talks like this all the time, especially every Thursday on U.S. higher education opportunities. And more information about those talks can be viewed on our Facebook page for the U.S. Consulate General in Chennai. I want to thank Go4Guru for connecting us with U.S. Astronaut Don Thomas and for exposing the youth of India to educational tours and NASA. I understand that Go4Guru will be bringing back Dr. Don Thomas to Chennai as early as August 28 to give some lectures here as well as elsewhere in India. And I hope I personally have the opportunity to meet astronaut Don Thomas. I consider you, sir, one of our brave U.S. national heroes for the example you have set achieving your dreams and furthering our space program. And I want to thank you again on behalf of all of us for taking time to share your experience with us and motivating each and every one of us, no matter what age, to follow our dreams. Thank you, sir.
Hey, thank you very much. It's been a great opportunity speaking with the students today at the consulate and also the students online. I very much look forward to my trip over to India. I want to share the message with other students and share the passion that I have with space flight. So I want to thank you all for being there today. Our students, boy, thanks for those great questions. As you already heard, they were well researched. When you're asking about woodpeckers, I know you've done your homework there. And I very much look forward to my visit over to India. That'll be my third trip, and I'm very excited about that. And I just want to thank all the workers, all the employees at the U.S. Consulate there. I told you my mother worked for the State Department for about 25 years. She traveled around the world, mainly in consulates. She was in a few embassies as well. And you guys do outstanding work there supporting our country and creating goodwill and peace around our planet. So I thank everybody working at your consulates. Please pass along my greetings and my appreciation for the work you do there.
Roger, will do, sir.